And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask Me Anything. I'm here today with Darlene Lanham. Lanham. See, I tried too hard. And then I couldn't do it. And I'm here with Rachna, Khare. All right. I am so sorry, Darlene. That is me. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are doing an Ask Me Anything for American Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So I am here today with the executive directors from Asian Family Support Services of Austin and Daya. So thanks, y'all, for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Courtney, for having us.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Just as a reminder, Ask Me Anything. You can post your questions in the comments should you have any questions for either of our guests today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First question. Tell us more about your agency. Who does your organization primarily serve?
Well, so I'll start, and we are Daya. We're here in Houston, and obviously, you know, like all of our amazing agencies, we do not turn away any survivors. We serve any and all callers that come to our agency. However, our services are culturally specific and linguistically specific for the South Asian community. So that is folks from India, Pakistan, Iran, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, and the Maldives.
Awesome.
And at Asian Family Support Services, of Austin, we also serve Asian communities, not limited to the South Asian community. We serve the more broad Pan-Asian community. So it would include national origin from East Asia, South Asia, Central, West Asia. Although we've started serving a number of folks who identify as immigrants from Africa, from South America, Latin America, and other countries. We also don't turn away anybody based on their identity, and we serve powerful people who have identities that are considered non-dominant in dominant U.S. culture.
Yeah, you know what, Darlene, we've been seeing an influx too of immigrants from North Africa as well. So I think there's, you know, there's a lot of communities that have intersecting cultural norms, and I think a lot of places people find that our organizations really suit their needs, especially when it comes to extended family abuse and immigration abuse.
Thank you both. That's good to know that it expands beyond just like specific, but also hones in on those. My next question for you are, what are the unique barriers and vulnerabilities of the survivors you serve?
Darlene, do you want to start that one?
Sure. It's helpful for me to sort of individualize it. And so I'll just think of a person who typically receives services from AFSSA, and we'll call her Maya. And generally, Maya is not fully aware of all of her rights to autonomy, safety, dignity, and independence. She doesn't know exactly, you know, all of the rights and remedies available to her. She's generally a mom. She may have come here on a fiancé visa. She's an Asian language that you know, could be any number of Asian languages, but not so much English or Spanish. And she doesn't have a car. She doesn't even have a driver's license because she's never had to drive before. She may have managed to safely leave her husband. You know, she may have learned that her husband has been married multiple times, but she's managed to safely leave her husband and probably her in-laws who are living with her. She's new to managing her finances because she's never had a bank account. You know, she's here on a dependent visa. She may have children, multiple children who are U.S. citizens. And she may be terrified of law enforcement and other dominant culture systems because she hasn't had to interact with them, and because her immigration status has been held against her, and she's been threatened with being deported. This
Mm.
a typical client scenario we serve.
Wow.
Yeah, that's so spot on and very typical to what we see as well. I will say also some of the unique vulnerabilities and barriers. Just honing in on that in-law abuse, I would say over 90% of our clients experience abuse from multiple perpetrators that are of their abuser's family. And when it comes to immigration abuse, something that we've seen on the rise is transnational abandonment, which is a situation in which the spouse, we can be kind of heteronormative right now for the purpose of this example, but if someone's husband says, okay, let's go on a trip to Bangladesh for a wedding, and then, with their child, and what might happen is they go on this trip, and while they're there, he says, you know what, I have to go back to work, kid has to go back to school, but you go ahead and stay an extra week with your family. But when he leaves, he will take her visa and cancel that return plane ticket. Then when he arrives at home, he'll file for divorce and claim abandonment of the child. So that is a situation that we're seeing quite a bit in our community, as well as forced marriage, which is used, under the guise of arranged marriage, which are two completely different things. One having consent involved, and one, of course, being coerced and forced. So definitely agree with Darlene, the fear of and the sort of lack of knowing their rights, because being the person whose immigration status is dependent on their abuser, they've been kept from knowing those rights. And also, I would say most of our clients are minimizing the abuse that is happening to them. They don't necessarily see the impact of psychological abuse, verbal abuse, or even some of the physical abuse. And they may not consider their risk as high because previously, if they have reached out to mainstream organizations, when they're doing those danger assessments, sometimes they score very low because they haven't come forward with the risk, especially due to sexual violence, which is something that's super taboo in our communities.
And I'll just add to the scenario that Rachna shared with us that a lot of times the forced marriage has other social institutions behind it. And so, many times what we'll see, a woman has been raped, forced to marry her rapist to protect family shame, or to prevent shame from coming to the family. And faith leaders or religious or spiritual leaders who have influence in the community are sanctioning and condoning these forced marriages too.
Yeah. She's so right. There's such deep isolation because if somebody chooses to leave that marriage, not only do they, lose this person that they were in love with and thought that loved them, but they also run the risk of losing their own family because of the shame that comes with divorce in the communities that we are serving.
Wow, that is a lot. That is a lot of aspects that play a role. Whew. So my next question I have is, how do you inform folks in the AAPI community about agency programming? Specifically, since what y'all described was a lot of control elements where they may not even know that this is available to them.
Yeah, I think mainstream agencies, we're out there in the community as much as possible. We're at cultural festivals. We have our booths up. We're working within the faith communities to offer trainings. So in that way, we're kind of using all of the tools at our hands, but there are some creative ways we get in there. I remember there are some organizations, for example, a few years ago, there was an organization that did like a women's lunch for their particular ethnic community. And usually that women's lunch was about breast cancer awareness or the importance of pap smears every year, things like that. And what we did is we did a wellness lunch because we knew that this is a lunch that the men are not invited to. And in that regard, we were able to really talk about domestic violence. And the way we framed it is really around what a healthy relationship looks like, so that people could start to see, okay, these are things that are lacking in my relationship. Because even the term domestic violence, there's a lot of stigma around even mentioning that term. So we get pretty creative on how to flip the script a little bit, how to reach out to smaller groups. We do these ambassador events too, where we have folks in the community. Like I would recruit Darlene to invite, 6 or 7 of her friends over for a brunch, and we could talk very candidly about Daya services, the different types of abuse, what it looks like, and what to expect when you give Daya a call.
I would add to AFSSA gets the word out about our services in many of the same ways. Presence at community events, festivals. There are a lot of different religious holidays and cultural holidays. And I think when you're serving a Pan-Asian community, from like Lunar New Year to Eid to Diwali, there's not a month where there's not a cultural celebration and lifting up our heritage involved. And so we really work to maintain a presence, but we also receive referrals from medical professionals, healthcare professionals, and law enforcement. A number of times will recognize that they have somebody who speaks an Asian language or has some cultural affinity to an Asian identity, and will connect with us. And a number of former clients or folks who have been our clients helping their friends. I mean, there are referrals in that way.
Is that our number one referral source is community members and previous clients? I imagine that's pretty common for y'all too. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both. My next question for you is, do you have bilingual and bicultural staff, volunteers, or interpreters available to help assist survivors? And what are some of the ways they're able to assist?
I'm so proud to say that at AFSSA, our staff really reflect the community. We talk about come as you are and come as who you are and bring your whole self. Our rally cry is all hearts, always, and that's like every way, not and but it's as in any way. And we have a really diverse staff team. We have South Asian folk, India, Pakistan. We have a woman from Senegal who operates our hotline. We have Latinx identified folks, Black, African American, African heritage, and Anglo folks. But a majority of our staff have some cultural connection or cultural affinity to being Asian, and our board does as well. So we're very proud to reflect the community that we serve.
Yeah, I would agree. 100% of our staff and board identifies as Asian American, which is something that we're really proud of. We speak, I was just doing a grant application like right before this. So I know that we speak 7 South Asian languages in-house, and then across our long-term volunteers and board members, like folks that we know we can get on the phone quickly. There's an additional 5 South Asian languages that are spoken there. But really with language, it's so interesting. We're able to do, of course, what folks would consider just all of those services, safety planning and referrals, education, psychoeducation, counseling, all of that is done in South Asian languages. But we also, we're finding it's not so much about the interpretation, it's also about the vocabulary. So I remember like we recently made these videos on what to expect when fleeing domestic violence. And we said, okay, we'll make one in English and then we'll make one in Hindi Urdu, which is the most common language spoken in our agency. And we had to come up with the script, of course. And when we worked on the script, when we were working on like the words domestic violence or abuse, we were really struggling. We all called our parents, we called our grandparents, like we were like, what is the word for domestic violence? And people could think of the word for hitting, for yelling, but there wasn't that like all encompassing term. And I thought, man, if that's not a barrier, like there's not even the vocabulary to talk about power and control in a way that is condensed as abuse, right? And so, it was really interesting because even when we found the word, when we were sort of workshopping it with native speakers, they were like, yeah, that's actually like too intellectual of a word, like it's not commonly used. It's more academic, not intellectual. It was more of an academic term. And so then instead in our video, we just started kind of listing the types of abuse instead of having this all-encompassing term.
Actual word.
Yeah, that was like a light bulb moment for me, where I thought, if ever there is an example of how this issue is buried within a community, the fact that there's not even a term for it really shows like why there's so much silence.
And I think that, to your question around how can people help, I feel like for Daya and for AFSSA and for, all of our communities all throughout Texas is educating yourself on dynamics of sexual and domestic violence and the dynamics of power and control, and help us change the culture. I mean, we want to end violence, and we're starting at such a place without the language, without the concepts. And so it will take all of us to please help us change the culture, inform people about what it is and isn't, inform people about what healthy relationships look like. I mean, no education around, what does it look like to negotiate fairly and negotiate your role in a relationship and have two people fully present. I mean, there's just no model for these healthy ways of being. And so, if anyone would join with Daya or join with us to commit to learning and journeying with us as we journey toward the ideal optimal state of health and joy and autonomy, and help us get the word out. That would make such a difference.
And I think also, with language, one of the things that I think is so important to know is that many of our clients come in speaking, some English, right? And so there's ways to communicate, even if, you don't speak the language. But part of the cultural specificity of the services is that you don't have to explain like your whole family dynamic to people that work here, because we get it. We get the in-law abuse. We understand the pressure. We understand how my marriage and the, a divorce that I may have could impact my sister's ability to get married. Those are those cultural dynamics that don't have to be explained. And when somebody's already in trauma, it's so hard to explain kind of these nuances of where you are coming from and the homes that you grew up in. It's much easier to be able to say, well, you know how it is in our culture, and for us to just nod and be like, yeah, we do know how it is.
We always talk about having a complete commitment to our cultural heritage and our roots. And so, we honor that as much as we recognize the ways that we need to challenge those norms that have held the violence in place. So, we love where we come from and we're proud of it, while at the same time we can help, unpack and challenge those attitudes that may have set us up to have this experience to begin with. And long-term care, we're in for the long haul. I think that there's no, we don't put time limits or case limits. These journeys, start at such special places, and there are unique, language and other barriers, immigration barriers. It can take a long time. It can take years to really fully achieve autonomy, and we journey with the survivors and communities until they don't need us anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thanks, y'all. So I know we're close to time, but I do want to say, if y'all have any questions, please throw them into the comments now. You can do this on Facebook Live or on YouTube. We want to hear from you, our members, what questions you have. So while we give a moment for folks to percolate on possible questions, I do have a random question for y'all. So I'm going to start here. Ooh. So what is something you collect? And this is one of my collections.
I love it.
It expands to the wall. I love cats. That's the long and short.
Clearly you do. Do you have a cat?
I have two.
Okay, just checking. Because would be a little.
I would probably have more if I could, but instead I just collect them in other varying forms.
I love that handsome cat in the middle, the tall brown cat, so lovely. And the blue cat, oh, so
Thank
sweet.
you. Thank you. So y'all have any
I want
collections?
to say I collect memories. I'm a social person. I love being with people, with my people, with your people, with new people, with old people, and I love just getting together and sharing stories and collecting memories.
I like it. I like it.
I used to collect. So prior to that, I was in a executive director role that allowed me to travel quite a bit internationally, and I used to always get like something small from every trip, like really small, and collect that. And then, well, I'm going to make the story sad. My house flooded during Harvey, and I lost all of those things. But that's okay, because I realized that like, oh, I wasn't too like heartbroken over it. And in fact, some of the friends and coworkers I traveled with started to give me stuff from the trips we went on together. But what I learned from that is actually I'm quite big on purging, and to everyone's detriment that I live with and like know, I'm like big on throwing away things. And I love homes that have like lots of stuff and like collected items, but I don't think I'll ever have one. At most, I collect my favorite books. So I'll actually like go buy them, physical books, instead of like, how I read or listen to them. And so that's kind of the only thing that I collect on display, because I love like a clean, empty house, I guess. Minimalist. I watch Marie Kondo, I guess.
I am the exact opposite of minimalist.
I love it though. It makes me so happy. Like I love the way it looks.
I'm actually a recovering collector. There maybe wasn't a thing that I didn't collect. And at one time I had a housemate who made a one in, one out policy with me. And I think it really trained me to be a better partner. And, because I love to like have things and very tactile, but I also in the last decade or so have just really loved the benefits of having, open space, clean spaces, space for thoughts.
Well, I love how your collection, it looks like so curated and cute together. I think my stuff just looked like piles of things. I can tell you have that like artistic eye. Every time we talk, I'm like, man, her background is like amazing.
Well, thanks y'all for sharing insight into your collections or the things that you formerly collected or no longer collect. Collecting memories is really nice. I like that.
I do like that. I have not a great memory, so I will work on that.
I wanted to go ahead and post this comment.
Oh, yeah.
So we got a question.
A fairy godfunder. Yes. I love this question. Honestly, at the moment, a fairy godfunder for me would fund a development staff member to then fund more things in a very flexible way. We don't have development staff at Daya, so I rely heavily on my incredible board for so much of the community fundraising, but we all find ways where having somebody that does like development, that funding could then lead to other funding. So it's the, that would be like the gift that keeps giving.
There are a couple of things for me. One would be a survivor-oriented business incubator, right? What better way to flip being, victimized by having all the power and control, taken from you your whole life, to like being a business owner and a job creator.
We're doing that, Darlene. So we should talk after this. We do that here. We can tell you like some cool ways to make that happen.
I would love that. So like a legit business incubator for survivors. And then the other thing we dream of is a media company where we are creating media around healthy relationships, celebrating our culture that's led by our communities and our people, and broadcast out around the planet to reach people in our home countries, to reach every person that would receive this media, and it's healthy, vibrant, brilliant, inspirational content. And so we'd love to have a media company to really push forward those prevention efforts.
And that is also a gift. That's also a gift that keeps giving, because then it's like can be shared by other organizations and other communities. I love that. If you do that, I will steal your stuff.
We'll work something out, Rachna.
Y'all can share.
Yeah. You know, the third, I'll say that the third thing is building our coalition, our culturally specific coalition within Texas and the nation. I feel like we're doing a lot amazing work informally together, but I'd love to formalize that culturally specific approach.
And we do. We love working together. We've got to spend a whole weekend together, like our teams got to spend an entire weekend together, 2 years ago before COVID happened. And we all just came back so energized. And that is definitely on our wish list.
Well,
but I don't think we need a fairy godfunder for that. I think we can do that.
It's 2021. It's a new year. Y'all can do it. So I think we are at time. So I just want to wrap up a few things. First off, if y'all have questions for either for Darlene or for Rachna, you can either post them in the comments, or if you want to follow up, yes. Write that down. That is the websites, but we also have info and contact. So these are the emails. I'll also post them in the comments on both YouTube and Facebook. But yes, please let us know if you have any questions. Don't hesitate. And Darlene and Rachna, I want to thank you both for joining me here today and sharing about your programs. That was awesome.
Well, thank you for making this space and especially celebrating the AAPI Heritage Month. So we're so happy to do it.
Yeah, I want to say thank you so much, Courtney, for inviting us to be visible as Asian organizations and Asian leaders serving survivors of sexual violence in Texas. A lot of folks don't know we exist, and I think your Texas Association of Sexual Assault and the way that you do build community among all of our crisis centers through the state and all of our programs really strengthens and improves the chances that we can end sexual violence, and also, you know, lifting up their different identities and heritages, you know, in the movement. I want to thank you so much. It means so much to us at AFSSA.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all. All right, I got nothing else. If y'all have questions or have future topics for Ask Me Anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day. Thank you.
Well.
Ah.